Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and professional writing needs. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits, as well as high net worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at info@pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to our viewers.
Yeah, sure. So I'm dialing in from Italy. It's the evening here. I'm a New York native. I spent, a decade of my life there with my family before moving to Italy. I have a background in law. I studied international law. We were just chatting a little bit before. I actually did a year or so in Beijing in China, studying international comparative law. So I've always been, you can say a quote unquote global citizen. At this point in my life, I've always, reflected on the influence of technology in our lives, and my recent novel, I Am Q, is something that I've been working on for quite some time now, and excited to dive into it because even in these reflections, even in this writing, never did I anticipate that it would reach such a point so fast. And, I have 2 young daughters. So there's a lot of personal and professional inclinations and reasons for wanting to get this out. And I appreciate the opportunity to chat a bit about the subjects and the themes involved in that. So
I'm actually not sure if I mentioned that you're the guest and what our topic is. Did I?
Oh, I maybe I jumped into that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Maybe I jumped into that.
I apologize. That was
No, that's okay.
And the topic,
Yeah.
the influence of technology on our daily lives. And I don't think I've made that mistake before, but there's a first time for everything. And may that be the biggest problem that we face today.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing.
All right. Well, the other problem is that I've just lost my mouse. So bear with me 1 second. I apologize for the technical difficulties.
I blame it on the cat.
Oh, okay. The cat. No problem. All right. Now, your book is called I Am Q. We're going to get to technology in a moment.
Sure.
But as a sort of Star Trek fan, when you know what I'm talking about?
No, actually, the only Star Trek I know is my uncle, who recently passed away as a paratrooper in Vietnam. I always remember walking into his bedroom and he was watching Star Trek. I don't know anything more than that.
Then I can't ask the question I was going to ask, but
go ahead anyway.
No, there was a character on Q who was omnipotent and a troublemaker, and I thought that might be your hook to technology. All right, we just had a little technology faux pas, which was my fault. All right. People are addicted to technology. I don't know if you're aware of it being in Italy, but here there is talk about having to regulate technology almost like tobacco because children are dying from interacting with social media. Explain to us your approach to technology.
Yeah, and if we're thinking about regulations, or we're thinking in the wrong direction, because if you jump ahead to the Pulse, Sarah Silverman out in California, the Writers Guild, she's kind of the front line of representing this legal action against AI, OpenAI, Meta, and everything that's happening, in this new world. And, to quote one of the New York Times columnists who was covering the story, Shira Frankel, she mentioned that, if you think that the courts and regulation is going to be the solution for this, you're mistaken, because we haven't even built safeguards for social media. We haven't even, built out legislation that addresses some of those early stage issues that arose with, we're talking about chat rooms and social networks. We're already light years beyond social networks. We're in this new space of meta. So my approach to technology is almost threefold, right, Bruce? I come at it as a writer, where I question it, I reflect it. I have the privilege, of being born a bit before the internet, and questioning the evolution of technology in our lives heavily. Then I come at it from a point of a parent with two young daughters, and think about the consequences of it, and am concerned. And then I come at it approach as everyone else, as a human being, where I just feel responsible. So
You, in applying to be on the show, you talked about three things: artificial intelligence, social networks, and corporate responsibility. And you connect it to your novel. So tell us about the novel.
Yeah, the novel began as an essay, somewhat of decades of reflection on technology, very, academic to an extent. And I was inspired by reading Daniel Quinn's Ishmael. I'm not sure if you've read some of his work before, but he wrote in like the 1970s, in that period of time, about big issues, social issues, and global issues such as, human population growth, consumerism. And he wrote a lot of essays, but he distilled his writing into a book called Ishmael, which is essentially a main character talking to a gorilla. And I found this framework to be extremely, thought-provoking and digestible for big issues. And after reading that, it inspired the framework of IMQ, which is essentially a main character who grew up in this bridge generation, right before the internet, who meets Q. And it's about this dialogue, and this Socratic dialogue that takes place between him and Q, who's in her young 20s, suffering from bone marrow disease. And the whole first part goes through this journey of really discussing the influence of tech and how it evolved and what it really means, and how we arrived at where we are today. Very much a reflection, pulling out some of the big themes that you had just mentioned.
Who is Q?
That would hopefully be for the reader to discover during this journey. But Q is in her young 20s. She's somewhat of a savant, processes information very fast, similar to kind of a Gen X, and there's a lot of mystery around Q and who she is. But her parents are very influential. One is an executive of a major corporate enterprise. The other is an anthropologist, a behavioral scientist. So there's a mix of a lot of influences in Q's life, but her learnings are very atypical to others. She grew up very internationally, and her life learnings come through experience, human experience specifically.
I wasn't sure if Q, based on what you said, was an animal, was a bot, or was a person. So that's why.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Definitely part of the journey.
Now, technology plays a role in every aspect of our lives. We're able to do things today that we weren't able to do even 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I received from people who wanted to be on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, when I was listed, 106 requests within 2 hours.
Wow.
I was able to respond to all of them by the end of the day and not kill myself because I know how to use the technology.
Mm.
And I know that you don't have to write a personalized email to everyone. It can be the same exact email, just change the name, and everybody's happy. So technology can be a great thing. On the other hand, it can be evil. It can spread evil, and it can do harm. So how do you manage technology? And now I'm quoting from what you wrote. In our lives, in our relationships, and in society, so that it will be a force for good.
It's very much an introspection, right? And it's a question.
You easy questions,
right? An introspection that I think individuals need to ask themselves. And if I can achieve anything with this writing, it is to reflect, right? Because what is progress, right? Progress is relentless. It's the tide. It's relentless. To me, what is survival? It's reflection. And if we don't reflect, reflection is like swimming. If we don't do that, we will drown. We will drown in progress. So there is no shortage of literature, right? I'm not the first one to do this. I'm the last in a long line that question progress from not just a technological lens, but progress from a industrial lens, progress from dating back.
In here.
What do you got on that?
The Kindle.
Yeah. Oh, is there something particular you're reading?
Oh, I'm always reading something. What I'm reading right now, you said you were reading something from the 70s. So am I. I'm reading something from the 1870s.
Okay.
But
there we go.
You are absolutely correct. There's nothing new in the world. It's the first person to write about computers was a woman whose first name I forget. Her last name was Lovelace. Do you know to whom I am referring?
No, I don't.
I forgot once, and someone shouted out a name of a porn star whose last name was Lovelace, and I didn't think, and I said thank you, and I continued, and I used that name, and then I realized what she had done. She set me up beautifully, and I'm the type of person who can take it because I dish it out. So it was fine.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I'm the 70s, right? I can go back, like, actually my bookshelf as well. Like one of my favorite authors, Herman Hesse, Khalil Gibran, a Lebanese poet. There's always been a lineage of individuals who question what does progress mean for humanity, and just seems to, and they did it on different levels, where technology essentially was very different from our conversation today. They're talking about, maybe the invention of the mill, and, how did people react to that, right? So I think that there's so many different threads in how you define progress, and it's not all negative, right? You obviously have positive innovation in life, that in the medical field, in, industrial applications. My observations painfully come from the social realm. It comes from the connection between people. It comes from me experiencing a world where, we're walking downwards and everything's in the palm of our hands. And this thread of the connection of people, the way we communicate, the way we interact, the way we understand what's real and emotional and meaningful, to me is the whole crux of this. You can even call it a rant if you want, because it's observations of how did we get here? How do we get here in such a compressed period of time? Are we taking a moment to think about these things and to understand that we're not looking at the world with our eyes before we take our phones and snap a photo and set it into cyberspace? Like, have we lost ourselves, and how? And so these are, that's the approach I'm taking. It's not a big survey of, of industry and other threads of progress more than it is like this visceral connection between people. Which is why I think, if I can get anything out of this, it's a reader saying like, okay, let's take a breath for a moment. We can unplug, we can spend time, without this in the palm of our hands. But I don't know. I don't know what the future holds.
I ghost wrote, is that the right word? Ghost wrote? Yeah. A book for someone who was in the tobacco industry. And if I remember correctly, it took one person one day to roll 50 cigarettes. And then they invented a machine that could roll 500 cigarettes in an hour. No one lost their job. They just made more cigarettes. At the time, well, not at that time, but years later, cigarettes were a prescribed medical treatment. The hazards and dangers were not known until after the Second World War. Now, we're beginning to learn of the hazards and the dangers of social media. I'm sorry, of technology.
Sure.
But what I find interesting is that there is never anything new in the world. You have a hard drive in front of you where you store information. I have a hard drive in front of me where I store information. Cavemen used to draw on the sides of caves to store information. Our brains are not supposed to be a data storage unit. They're supposed to be for the analysis of data and just remembering what we need to know to survive. What do you see as the next stage in the development of the relationship between humanity and technology in an age of AI, virtual reality, augmented reality, and God knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah. Critical thinking, right? Thinking critically. If we lose that, I mean, will we survive? Yeah, we'll survive because we've built other innovation solutions where we can live our lives peacefully, happily. I don't know why. I mean, I'm reading this book by Christopher Ryan. It's called, Civilized to Death, and he goes way back in some of the things you're talking about now, about survival, even instinct. And his take on progress is like when we actually started to become an agricultural society, when we started to become domesticated, and not be hunter-gatherers anymore and nomadic, that's where civilization was the death of humanity to a certain extent, because that's where agricultural production came in. That's where we started killing off anything that didn't feed us. That's where we started storing excess, and saving up. And it's really interesting literature, and he's not the only that thinks kind of in this discipline, where once the Fertile Crescent, and we started settling down, is when we started to actually lose our harmony with the world. And so if we talk about survival, I think of the universe. I think of these greater forces that are well beyond us and our relationship with space and time and existence on this planet and this beautiful blue marble. And if we think that technology is going to save us, well, I don't know. I mean, how and what capacity it might, but it will save maybe a few. but maybe even those feel. I just think of, when I think of survival, I think of core human traits innate in us that go generations back, and that is really, we're far beyond that now. So the concerning aspect about artificial intelligence and now kind of surfacing up to the to our lives in an unprecedented way and very fast is that we're facing a very big existential threat, between already knowing what is real, what's fleshy real versus what's natural. I'm sorry, fleshy real and natural versus what's artificial. And we will lose critical thinking to a certain extent, because your emails that you respond to when you get 200 inquiries in the span of 2 hours, you don't even have to copy and paste anymore. AI can just respond for you, Bruce. I had a Zoom meeting the other day with my publishing manager, who's very much like Web 3.0. He's really a forward thinker. We had a Zoom meeting that lasted about 45 minutes. 2 seconds after our meeting, I got an automated email recapping the main points of our discussion. I didn't even know it was listening. It recapped in an extremely very intelligent manner, the main points of our discussion. And I mean, even Zoom itself, they wanted to record these conversations and facial recognition and voice. I mean, they got a lot of pushback recently, but that's where it's going. And it's I don't know. I don't know where it goes. I don't know what survival means in that sense.
They've got something now called AI Companion on Zoom, which I haven't clicked on yet. I'll look at it. I got enough to do, and it's something. My approach to AI was to first learn about the societal and legal issues, because I consider AI to be like any other software. You buy a program, you load it on your computer, and then it has to update because there were problems. And then 6 months later, you get an email from the company saying you need to update, there's a security patch, or we've got something new, so it's automatically updated. I wanted to wait for all of the problems to be solved. And in AI and ChatGPT, they have what are called hallucinations, where ChatGPT makes things up. The famous example are footnotes of books that don't exist. And I was contacted by somebody who said that they had an article and they wanted the footnotes checked. And I'm looking at the first page, and I called the guy up and I said, something's not right here. I can't find any of these publications. And he goes, it was written by ChatGPT. That's it. That's your problem. You don't know if it's authentic, and you don't know if it's if you're violating any copyrights. So you're probably getting yourself into trouble. Don't know how to get out of it? I'm not a lawyer.
Right. Yeah.
I said, maybe you need to make some sort of disclaimer. I don't know.
We did that. We did this for this book too. And you won't. It's novel because you won't find it in any other publishing house. There's a disclaimer that says if there's AI scraping or unlawful use of any of this material whatsoever, there will be this fine. So I don't know how much more fine print you can get that's very clearly dictating, because intellectual property right now is the first front line for losing their creative output. And that's happening, as we mentioned, in California with Sarah Silverman, her litigation against OpenAI, and Meta, where content writers and creators basically have fed this machine unknowingly, and it's being used and it's out there. So it's really complex. It's really complex, and it's not all doomsday.
No.
Right. It's a tool, like you said. It could be a software. It updates. It is going to create paradigm shifts in the way that we use technology, and it's going to impact labor markets and many other parts of our daily lives.
Well, that's the irony of it.
Is
AI
there?
can code. So the coders who created AI will eventually put themselves out of business.
Well, of course, engineers will, in many ways, unless they're creating something, a new paradigm in code, will, not be obsolete, but AI will be able to generate this type of code. It's meant to automate processes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to put up your contact information. I want to thank you profusely for coming on. This has been a unique show. Usually we don't get philosophical. Last question. Is there anything that I did not ask you that you wish I had asked you? And if I had asked you, what would you have said? And I apologize, this is the wrong slide. So I'm going to stop the share and I'll do it correctly this time. So here's your contact.
Yeah, it's a great question. There we go. Perfect.
And is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had asked you? And if I had asked you, what would you have said?
No, I mean, quite honestly, it's been a pleasure, Bruce. Maybe if you want to join us again on another show,
Sure.
that I would appreciate that question. That'd be great. And I would say, yeah, I'm happy to, because it's an ever evolving subject. I think there's a lot of directions we can take this conversation. So it's been my pleasure to chat with you about this on these deeper levels and kind of very layered topics. So thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I thank you. And on behalf of our viewers, I thank you.
All right.
I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching. And as always, please stay focused on success.